My dear young innovators, good evening. Before starting, a small disclaimer, we are going to record this session, and this is going to be shared on the NXP YouTube channel, and parallelly we can share the link on our LinkedIn group so that you can watch this offline also. As you guys are aware of, NXP created a platform called NXP Campus Connect. The main purpose of this platform is how we can share new technologies, a deep dive on different latest innovations, and how we can share all those things with the college students. As you are aware of, I'm just repeating it again because there are a few new guys today. On every first Tuesday every month, we are going to run the VLSI track where our experts are sharing their expertise on different VLSI topics. On third Tuesday every month, we are running system engineering tracks where NXP experts are sharing their views on different applications, that how different applications are going to be enabled. And in that, today's is third Tuesday. So a session related to system engineering, and today's session name is real-time systems. So today our experts are going to share more related to how the hardware, software is going to play the role in defining, developing, debugging a real-time system. The operating system is also, plays the major role there. So team is going to touch that prospects also. And then we have a case study of how FreeRTOS operating system is going to be used in different real-time systems. We have two of our NXP experts visible on the screen, Rajan Srivastav, who is having 20+ years of industry experience in the domain of embedded system design and development, and playing key roles in defining and architecting the real-time systems. We have Rajesh Bhagat also having 15+ years of industry experience, and he is our expert on architecting the real-time systems, working mainly in a networking domain, and parallelly several other fields which he already worked on. So I'm going to hand over this platform to Rajan. Welcome Rajan and Rajesh on this platform. The audience is mostly from engineering colleges, starting from first semester of BTech till PhD students, plus few professors, and the staff which is managing the labs. And we have NXP labs in few campuses across India. So over to you, Rajan. You update our engineering college students that whenever they are thinking of real-time systems, what are the ingredients and what all things we have to take care, and how the different blocks are going to play the role. So over to you, Rajan.
Yeah, thank you, Manish. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And welcome everyone. This is Rajan Srivastav, and I will start the session on this real-time systems. So today in this session, we are going to talk about real-time system. Real-time system, by its name, it suggests it is something related to timeliness or punctuality, how quickly something can be done. And in this session, we'll be talking about exactly what is real-time system, what is its use case, I mean, in the real world, where you'll find these real-time systems being used, and in the internally, how does a real-time system look like from the hardware side, from the software side, and focus will remain on the software side. In the real-time systems, an RTOS or a real-time operating system plays a great role. So we'll discuss what is the contribution from an operating system to meet the real-time system requirements, and then we'll pick up one example real OS, which is used in RTOS application, which we call FreeRTOS. So that is one example real-time OS that we'll pick up. We'll go into internals of this. And then in the last part of the session, we'll take up a case study, or you can say one example, how to build a real-time system for a mobile phone or a mobile handheld device kind of use case. So that is the agenda for today. Let's start with what is real-time system. So some of the system that you see on the screen, these are called general purpose systems, which are generally based on Windows, Linux, or Android, or similar kind of operating system. And these are used primarily for desktops, servers. When I say servers, this could be a server where in a data center, financial banking systems are storing their data, or any social networking is storing data. And then handheld devices, they also use Windows, Android kind of OS. And from real-time perspective, just give you one example, how does the real-time come into play in this context. So if you move your mouse using your hand, the mouse pointer on the screen, you are expecting that whenever you move your hand, mouse pointer should also move quickly. And here the catch is quickly. How quick? Probably less than 1 second if it is moving. We can say, yes, I'm okay with this kind of GUI and the performance of the system. Sometimes you might observe a delay. You move mouse using your hand, and mouse really moving on the screen after 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Once in a while, that should be okay. And it is not catastrophic when you observe any delay in mouse movement. Catastrophic means you don't consider that this system, your Windows PC or mobile phone, is completely useless. If there is some delay, if you're moving your mouse or your finger and the mouse pointer or the screen is not showing you the corresponding reaction. So generally we call these kind of system non-real-time systems. And these systems generally try to meet timelines, but they just try. There is no guarantee that timeline will be met. And there is no timeline also, because when you move your mouse, someone would like to see mouse moving as early as possible. Okay, someone will be okay even if mouse is moving in 2 seconds or 3 seconds. So those timelines are not very well defined in these non-real-time systems. And whatever is the user experience, that user experience, if compromised because of some delays, that is completely acceptable. So there is no timeline guarantee. On the other end of the spectrum of these real-time system is the couple of examples that I'm showing on the screen. One, the guided missile. What is guided missile is once missile is launched, it is expected that some entity, it could be some sensor and processing unit inside the missile, or some base station who is controlling the missile. So during the trajectory or during the flight, missile might need to change its direction, because there could be several factors to change the direction of the missile. The target kind might be moving, or there is a strong wind that is changing the direction of the missile. So what is required here? The direction of the missile should be modified immediately as soon as that controlling entity identifies there is a change in the direction or speed required. And that change in the speed and direction needs to be effected very quickly. And how quickly, we'll come to that point later. Another example that I'm showing here is generally used in all the modern cars, ABS, anti-lock braking system. If you see, there are two trajectories shown for the car. If you see the bottom one, which is a black and white gray color car, a car is moving from right direction to the left direction in this screen. And the bottom one is without ABS, where car is moving. The first car from the right side is showing the car is moving towards left side. The middle car is showing that is front wheel is tilted towards the right side because the driver has identified there is a blockage, which is shown as a red box here. Okay, and then driver has tilted the steering, which is moving the wheel. So you can see wheel is slightly moved in right direction, but because of his speed and because there is a slippery road, so this car is slipping out and it is eventually hitting the blockage or the obstacle. But if you see the upper one picture, which is having some yellow color lines, the first car at the same point, it has detected that there is a blockage or obstruction, and then it applied a brake, and this car has ABS. So when the steering is moved, the ABS feature has come into effect, and it has taken over the control how to release and brake the car wheels so that the car can take the right direction. So you can see the car is smoothly changing its track, which was expected to avoid the obstruction which was there in the front, which is not shown here in the screen. So all these actions that ABS is demanding, that must be started and completed within a few milliseconds. And if you miss this timeline, what will happen? This car is going to collide with the obstruction. Similarly, if you miss the timeline for moving the direction of the missile, or if you are not able to change the speed of the missile at the right time, that it is very likely that the missile is going to miss the target. So these type of system, these are very small subset of the overall examples of real-time system. So these are the real-time system example. And the catch here is they must always finish the required action within the timeline, because if they miss timeline, then the result is catastrophic. In this case, first case, missile will end up landing somewhere else instead of the target. And in the second case, if system is not always meeting the timelines, then there is a chance that suppose we say that out of 100 times, once system is missing the timeline. So what will happen? Out of 10 times you apply brake to a sudden brake and road is slippery, then one time it is the chance that you will hit the obstacle and it will defeat the purpose, and it might cause some accident kind of scenario. So the real-time systems, the requirement is they must always finish the desired action within the timeline. So now, so far we talked about two types of system, real-time system and non-real-time system. Now let's have a quick look at what is the difference between these two. So examples for real-time system: missiles, self-driving car, mobile tower. So when we say mobile tower or the base station transceivers that you see on top of the buildings, so these are also a real-time system, and they have to follow timelines that have been defined by 3GPP specs. And if a tower is unable to meet those timelines, which are in some cases in terms of some tenths of microsecond, there are several types of timelines defined by 3GPP for different layers of 5G stack. So if a mobile tower is not able to meet those timelines, so some of the actions are so critical that mobile tower will be considered as a failure, and there are some protective timers in the system which will cause the system to reboot. And if that happens, then this is not acceptable, because a cell in a mobile tower, if it is rebooting, then definitely for some time there will be outage, which is not acceptable. So this is a catastrophic in this case. Cell phone. So cell phone has today's cell phone have a lot of features. For example, it has a screen, touch screen. You can run games, and you have video, audio, and 5G or 4G stack. The 4G, 5G stack need a real-time treatment on the screen. Cell phone, if you see some dots and freezes, I mean, if the screen is not changing very rapidly according to your expectation or according to the game that you are playing, you are probably okay once in a while. But if you are making a call and your time, the 3GPP defined timelines are not being met in the stack, then what will happen? Call will drop, and that is not somehow desirable. Elevator lift, the lift that we use in multi-story buildings. So when you press a button and when you reach around that floor, the lift automatically starts reducing the speed, so that lift comes to a halt exactly at the same floor level, so that once the door opens, you don't have even a 1 centimeter of difference between the floor level and the outside floor. So that is also a real-time system requirement, and every time door opens, this leveling of internal and external floors are to be met. TV display. So on the TV screen, you might want to have a flawless display, no dots and freezes because of any reason, but sometimes people accept that. Okay, so in these real-time system, you can see in some of the cases, system is likely to be considered as failure, but in some cases, like TV display, if in 1 hour or so you are seeing some dots and freezes, probably that should be acceptable. People will not complain much about that. Non-real-time system, generally examples are laptop, desktop, servers, cell phone, ATM machine, TV remote, and similar thing. Meeting deadlines or the timelines. In real-time system, it is mandatory to meet timelines every time. That is a must for most of the use cases here. In non-real-time systems, it is generally good to have. Occasional timeline misses are acceptable. What happens when timeline or deadline is missed? In real-time system, we generally consider that as a catastrophic or system failure. In non-real-time systems like laptop or ATM machine, that is completely okay. If once in a while system is slow, probably it is going to cause inconvenience to the user who is interacting with that machine, or some degraded performance. There are some other names you can find on in the academic articles. Real-time system, sometimes people call it a hard real-time system. Then sometimes people call it soft real-time system. Then there are some other categories also. I'm not going to discuss about these other names, so that are used by different authors in different contexts. So these are the primary differences between real-time systems and non-real-time systems. Some terminologies when we talk about real-time. So real-time, as we discussed, real-time indicates toward the capability of a system to complete the desired action in the defined time frame and deadline. So different system might be having different time frames or deadline. For example, if a car has to apply brake, then a different time lines are required to complete that action. But if we are talking about a mobile or cell tower, they have different kinds of time frame or deadline. So what is a timeline or time frame? That is dependent on use case. But real-time system, whatever is the defined timeline or time frame for that particular product, that is required to be met always. Then the second part of real-time system is system. What is system here? System includes hardware. So a real-time system will have a CPU, motherboard, onboard peripherals. Okay. For example, if we are talking about a self-driving car, then obviously there is a very high capacity CPU is required, motherboard, and onboard peripherals. For example, you might be having some sensors, some video camera. Okay. So all these things are part of a system when we talk about real-time system, and all of these have some roles to play. And then the biggest contributor of real-timeness in the system is software. And when we say software, then this includes operating system, this includes device drivers, this includes protocol stack and applications. Okay, so now we are moving to how a design of a real-time system looks like. So this I will explain through a self-driving car. That is a very popular use case nowadays. A lot of experiments are going on throughout the world, especially in the United States, around self-driving car. So in self-driving car, when it is moving, it is taking input from several sensors. One of them is video camera. So video camera, what it is doing in this case, for example, if the car is moving at high speed in the front direction, so there will be a couple of front cameras. They will be giving graphics feed to the CPU of the system, CPU of the car. And this every few microsecond or millisecond, this video camera will be giving the front side view to the car. Now the CPU of the car is responsible to process that media information that is coming from the camera. And now suppose after analysis of the graphics or the photos sent by the camera, it is decided, software decides that there is a blockage or an obstruction in the path of the car, then the CPU of the car will immediately decide how much brake is to be applied and how much steering is to be moved. So these are the real-time action that needs to be performed. And during these operations, suppose a low priority inputs are coming. For example, there is a rain sensor also in the car, and wiper needs to be moved. Okay, or some other action needs to be performed. So that is not as critical as identifying whether there is a blockage, and if blockage is there, then apply some corrective action in the trajectory of the car. So once the car CPU decides some corrective actions are required, so the CPU will send instructions to the brake control system of the car, and it will also send instructions to the steering control system of the car. And then these controls will send further information to the actual brake hardware and the steering hardware. And then once all the real-time or the critical tasks are performed, then CPU will pick up anything which is pending. So in this case, the example that I have taken is the rain sensor. So this rain sensor inputs are coming, which were marked as pending. So once the critical actions are performed, CPU is retrieving those background activities, and then it will start taking action on those pending work. So here, what is real time is indicated by the red arrow on the right side of the screen, deadline. So when this deadline is starting, right at the moment when this video camera input is given to the CPU, now the CPU has entered into the real-time segment. So it has to perform all the critical actions between these two timelines, which are indicated by two horizontal dashed lines in the blue color. Within this timeline or before this timeline expires, CPU must complete all the actions that are mentioned in the blue boxes here. That means calculating or processing the media, identify whether there is any blockage, then checking what is the current speed, what is the current steering direction, then deciding what is the amount of brake to be applied, how much steering to be moved, then sending those instructions to the brake and the steering system. All these must finish in this deadline. And if this deadline is met, we are good. But if deadline is not met, then this car is heading towards some unfortunate instances. So in that example, what we saw, that real-time system needs timely processing of actions, and how the system meets timelines or deadlines. Software has very important role, but hardware also has some role. So we'll go through what are the various roles in software and hardware in the next page. Okay, so this page is showing how software should behave in a real-time system. So what is the expectation? Whenever a time-critical event is detected, perform the required action. Let's go into further deep. What does it all mean? So there are three stages. Stage number one, the software should be able to detect a critical event or which is generally interrupt deterministically in some timeline, which I am saying n microsecond. It could be anything. It could be n millisecond or something. So the first requirement for a real-time system is to have, for software, it should be able to detect the critical event very quickly, because if an interrupt is coming and software is not aware of this this information that a critical event has happened or critical interrupt has arrived, and software is not aware of that, then this is not good. So the first thing that is needed, expected from the software or a real-time software is software should always be in a position to detect the critical events within the timeline or deterministically in the given timeline. Okay, so first stage, identifying the event very quickly. The second stage, which is shown in the middle box, is start taking action quickly. That means software should schedule the required task or the process or handler quickly. So number one stage was identifying something that some critical actions is required, then schedule that particular action handler immediately so that action should be started execution. So these are the two stages, but even now this is not guaranteed that system will complete the required action. So the third is ensure that whatever execution is happening, okay, you are having some interrupt routine, or you are having some task, some process, some thread which is executing that real-time or time critical action. That particular interrupt routine or application or thread must complete its execution without any disturbance or with minimal disturbance within the timeline. Okay, so there are three stages of how you can address a real-time thing. Stage one, detect that something critical is waiting for some actions to be taken. So that is stage one. Stage two, schedule that handler of that critical event. This is stage two. Stage three, which is ensure that whatever task has been scheduled to execute those critical actions, that task should be continued without any disturbance or preemption, so that your desired actions must complete deterministically. And how these things are ensured? So how is early detection ensured? So early detection means one interrupt was presented by hardware, and now we want to ensure that software must be notified immediately. So what is generally preventing a software from getting the notification of interrupt? Suppose another task which has already kept interrupt disabled. So there are nice OS primitives to keep interrupt disabled. And if someone has kept that interrupt disabled, so what will happen if a system is not properly designed, and that might lead to a scenario where a system has all the interrupt disabled, and even real-time interrupt or the critical interrupts is also presented by the hardware, but software has disabled the interrupt, so software is not able to start action. So what is required here? Do not keep IRQs disabled for long duration. So all the software drivers, device drivers or application, if you're writing the software in the kernel, okay, Linux kernel, for example, or any supervisory execution software that you're writing, it is expected that the software designer should not keep IRQs disabled for long duration. This is undesired. Generally, operating system also provides some kind of framework through which, even if a device driver writer is not following guidelines, still OS will provide some kind of framework so that the impact from bad programming from the user is still minimized. So here, real-time operating system and software that a user has to write, those have to follow strict guidelines for a real-time system. Now, stage two, where we wanted to schedule the actual task or the thread immediately. So how that is ensured in a real-time system? This is ensured by priority scheduling by the OS. So every operating system has the multiple types of scheduler. Okay, you might have read this in your textbook about different scheduling algorithms. So some operating system provide one of those algorithm. Some of the operating system provide multiple scheduling algorithms. So according to the real use case, so real-time systems have different kinds of use cases. Okay, so there are multiple flavors of real-time scheduling policies, which we will discuss later in the session. So you will have to identify appropriate real-time scheduling policy for your system, and then you will have to enable that particular policy in the OS. So this will ensure that whatever is the time critical handler for that particular time critical activity interrupt, that is scheduled within the timelines deterministically. Then the third item is how to ensure that whatever task you have scheduled to complete the real-time action, that is executing without any disturbance or without any preemption. Okay, so how to control this thing? So preemption, so you can look into the preemption control by OS. So select appropriate preemption algorithm in the OS at the compile time or at the runtime, whatever be the capabilities of your real-time OS. Very small ISR, so this is desired that ISR should be very small, very few instructions in the size, so that during the process execution, even if ISRs are coming, they're not consuming much of the time. Lockless design. So lockless design means suppose you have a real-time task which needs to finish its activities within some given timeline. And now suppose this task has some dependence on a semaphore or spin lock. So what will happen, this real-time task which has to finish its work on a time, but now it will have to wait for that semaphore to be freed by someone else or some spin lock to be freed by someone else. So try to have that lockless design in place. In case we have to have lockless design, then priority inversion feature should be there in the real-time OS, so that even if you have a locks in your design for the real-time task, still you can meet your timeline. So there are several other aspects in the system that are important, but one thing is common, that OS has a lot of role to play in this entire story of the real-time system. So how OS or real-time OS RTOS is providing you the IRQ framework, how it is providing you the scheduling algorithm, then how it is providing you this preemption control in the OS, then priority inversion. There are several other features. So all these things, RTOS has a very important role in implementing any real-time system. Okay, so now we are going to go in more details, where I'm requesting my colleague Rajesh to take over. Rajesh, over to you.
Hi, Rajan. So thank you for passing the baton. Yeah. So let me start. So basically, we are talking about here the performance parameters that are there for a real-time operating system. So as Rajan mentioned, that determinism is the important key for a real-time operating system. There are some other parameters also which are very, very important and which need to be considered whenever we are choosing a real-time operating system for a real-time application or a real-time system. So the first parameter is the latency. What is the latency? Latency means the time difference between the event when it is generated and when the response of that event is received. What does it mean? It means that, let's say we have a device where an interrupt is being generated. So whenever interrupt is generated, we take a timestamp, let us say T1, and when the associated interrupt handler in the software is called at time T2, if we take the difference between these two times, it is known as the latency of the system or the interrupt latency of the system. If you just look at the picture on the right side, there is one computer which is just sending a packet to some machine and a packet is received back. So the total latency will be sum of both the latencies, I mean sending the packet and receiving some kind of response. So latency, as I told you, is one of the important parameter for performance parameter for the operating system. The next item is jitter. What is jitter? Jitter is actually indirect information which can be obtained from various latency measures. Now, if we talk about various latency values, just take the example on the right. When there are some cars going and there's no difference between them, the distance between them is very less, so you can see there is no jitter between them. They are traveling at a very fast pace. Let us say if all the cars are going at a same speed and there is very same distance between them, then traffic can flow very easily and there'll be no jitter. But in case the one car is slow, one car is fast, or let's say there is a gap between the cars is less or slow, then it will be causing the jitter, as well as the traffic will be not at the speed at which it will be at the no jitter speed. So to summarize here, if we talk in the sense of interrupt latencies, the difference between two consecutive interrupt latencies will be called the jitter. So if we take, let's say, the first interrupt latency, when we measured, it came as latency 1, and we measured the another latency, which is latency 2. The difference between these two latencies in the system is called the jitter. So jitter represents the determinism of the real-time operating system. So jitter should be minimal in the system. Latency should also be minimal in the system. And the third parameter is the worst case response time. What is worst case response time? It is the maximum time difference between the event is generated and the response was received. So let us say if we take n sets of data and we try to calculate the difference between the time event generation as well as the event response. So whatever maximum time it took to get that event, that is known as the worst case response time. So if we talk about all these parameters now, so according to the real-time application, we might choose that we want to implement a system where latency is lower, or we want to implement a system where jitter is lower, or we should have a very less worst case response time, or there can be a system which can have all these three parameters. So according to our application, we might need to choose the real-time operating system. So in the other slides, I'll be covering what all real-time operating systems are available and how we chose the operating system for NXP and how we actually put it into our products. So can you please switch this one slide? So real-time operating system is chosen on the basis of the quantitative parameters I just described.
Yeah.
Next.
And there is a important role from the hardware side also in the complete story. So we saw what is the role of a software, primarily the real-time OS, and then application or device driver. The hardware also has a very important role to play. Some of the examples are given here on the screen. For example, if you see interrupt controller, so interrupt controller must provide multiple interrupt lines. Suppose if you have a system where the interrupt controller provides a very few interrupt lines, then what will happen? You will have to multiplex interrupt lines, and whenever one interrupt comes on that multiplex interrupt sources, so the first action that software will have to do is to distinguish or identify exactly which of the multiplexed sources are generating the interrupt. So figuring out which one is which peripheral has generated the interrupt is going to take several assembly instructions, which might be very critical. The time that is elapsing in that execution of those assembly instructions to distinguish exactly which interrupt source has sent the interrupt. So the hardware, hardware can help in reducing the overall latency in the system. They can provide more interrupt lines so that software can map any interrupt line to any interrupting peripheral. Then interrupt controller should also provide the capability of the prioritized interrupts. For example, if you are executing an ISR for some time critical peripheral, okay, and at that time you would like to have only interrupts enabled only for the more critical devices, and you would like to have interrupts disabled for the lower prioritized peripherals. Okay, so interrupt controller must provide these capabilities to prioritize which interrupt you want to be executed seamlessly and which interrupt you want to be preempted. Then suppose you are having some system which to save energy, you want to have a sleep kind of implementation in the system. And if your system is real-time system is sleeping and then suddenly some action is taken so that real-time tasks have to execute, then there should be very fast wake up in the system. So that also needs some very quick execution in the hardware itself, so that from low power state, the overall system can come to the highest power state or whatever is the right power state for that particular event execution. And of course, one of the good example of hardware support is multi-core CPU. Multi-core CPU means you suppose you have a one core system where you have to execute all kinds of software, which is real time, which is non-real time, then definitely your system design will become very difficult. But if you have a two-core system, so what you can do, you can identify one core for real-time actions, and then you can assign rest of the non-real-time actions on the other CPU. So these are only a few examples using which we are saying that hardware also has an important role in overall timeline meeting. So now Rajesh is going to take you through the examples of some popular real-time OS.
So to start, so I'll be covering these topics today. So I'll be starting with popular real-time operating systems. Then I'll be covering the deep dive into the FreeRTOS, where I'll cover what is FreeRTOS, how the FreeRTOS is real-time, what makes FreeRTOS real-time. So how's the heap as well as the memory managed in FreeRTOS? How are tasks managed in FreeRTOS? So I'll be covering all these topics today. So just to start, I'll just share some terminology of open source. So I'm not sure if you all are aware. So open source is the software which is available free for use, and anyone can inspect, modify, and enhance it, and then give it back to the community. So whenever we are talking about open source software, it is freely available, and a lot of support is available for it, and people are generally using it and showing more confidence in the open source software now. And just to give you a very good example, yesterday Ingenuity, which is a tiny NASA helicopter that became the first powered aircraft to fly on another planet, that is Mars. And I believe it is a very big engineering feat that was achieved with help of Linux, which is an open source software. And NASA has also developed a lot of framework over Linux to achieve it. But I think this kind of activity or this kind of mission creates a lot of confidence in open source software. And so FreeRTOS, which is the main RTOS we'll be talking about today, is also an open source software, and NXP is also showing confidence, where maybe other companies are also taking it as a main operating system in their critical projects. So open source is very crucial, and we should understand its importance. So now let us start with this presentation. So as Rajan clearly indicated, what is the difference between the real-time system and a non-real-time system? So generally, a non-real-time systems are having general purpose operating system, which means they have Windows, Linux, Mac, Android, whatever we have on our desktops, or let's say we have on our laptops, on our handheld devices. So those are the general purpose operating systems. And why they are called as general purpose? Because they are running the general purpose applications on them, which means we might be doing some word processing on it, we might be doing some PowerPoint processing, we might be seeing some video. It is not for a specialized purpose, it is for general processing. And the real-time OS, on the other hand, is for a specialized product, and it is deterministic. So that is the main difference between general purpose operating system and the real-time operating system. So these are actually the softwares for the real-time systems and the non-real-time systems, and the determinism is the main key criteria which is differentiating the both. And the other key factors that are, differentiate between these are, the general purpose operating system has a fair scheduling, which means if there are n number of tasks, they will be fairly scheduled. I mean, everyone will be getting equal chance of getting executed. But RTOS, that is the real-time operating system, so they have a priority-based scheduling, which means that determinism or highest priority task will be preempting the lower priority task. So that's why it is not a fair scheduling. The next difference between, so in case of general purpose operating system, there is no predictability of execution of task. In real-time operating system, on the other hand, we have predictability behavior. In general purpose operating system, it optimizes the average case, but the real-time operating system, it works under the worst case assumptions also. The general purpose operating systems, they run in an environment where we have lot of memory, but in RTOS, because we are running in maybe microcontrollers or small microprocessors, then we have a very small amount of memory associated with them. So as I told you that there are real-time operating systems, there are the examples of them are Linux with the RT patch. So Linux, I think all of you know that Linux is a general purpose operating system, but there is some open source effort which has been made, which was developed as a different patch initially, but now it has been mainlined. So whenever there's a preempt RT option enabled into Linux, it becomes a real-time operating system, and that is used in various products. FreeRTOS is again a operating system or a real-time operating system which is used for microprocessors and lot of small microprocessors as well as the microcontrollers. So Linux is maintained by Linux Foundation. FreeRTOS is basically maintained by Amazon Web Services. Zypher again is another real-time operating system which is maintained by Linux Foundation. And there are other commercial real-time operating systems. When I say commercial, it means that they might be closed source, or you might need to pay. They are not free, so you might need to pay to the company to get their source code or get their support. For example, QNX and LinksOS. So these kind of real-time operating systems are present currently in the market. And why all of the companies generally focus on the open source operating systems or open source real-time operating systems? Because it is very easily available, the support is readily available, lot of communities and maintainers are able to provide the fixes, hot fixes, stability fixes, and the long-term release supports are also available for these operating systems. That's why it is very easy to adapt a open source real-time operating system into your product. So let's move to the next slide. So next I'll be covering what is FreeRTOS, and I'll be digging into what is FreeRTOS. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So FreeRTOS, as I told you, FreeRTOS is basically a real-time operating system for microcontrollers and small microprocessors. So I hope everyone knows what is the difference between a microcontroller and a microprocessor. Microprocessor is microprocessor, you can say the processor which are generally present in your mobile phones, which are big in size for example, which might be having 1 gigahertz of speed, or which might be having the bigger memory, are known as microprocessors. and the processors which are very small, for example, consider a case of washing machine. It does not need a big logic to be implemented in itself. So it have the microcontroller in it. Or for that matter, for your mobile, it need to execute a big OS, it need to execute lot of applications. It might be having a small microprocessor or a normal microprocessor. So the FreeRTOS fits into the microcontrollers also, because it is having a very small footprint, that is a few kilobytes. It may range from 10 kilobyte to 50 kilobytes. So even if we have a very small device which have very small memory or very small flashes, we can use FreeRTOS to implement the real-time system into our device. The next is that it is distributed freely. As I told you, it is a free operating system. You can just go to the FreeRTOS website and download it, and it is given under the MIT open source license. Now, MIT is a specific license which allows you to use the software in similar to the open source way, where you can also keep your closed source and still use the open source FreeRTOS. So whatever stack you are developing will be kept as the closed source, but the FreeRTOS main kernel can be used as an open source. So by linking your code, the closed source code, with the MIT license does not make your code also open source. So that's why it is even better, because you can also develop your proprietary code over FreeRTOS in your product. So what is FreeRTOS and what does it really contain? So if you just look at the picture at the right, FreeRTOS contains a kernel, and it also contains a lot of IoT libraries. Now it is not full-fledged kernel if we compare it with the GPOS. I mean, if we compare it with general purpose operating system, it is not a full-fledged kernel. It means that it might not have the TCP/IP stack by default, might not have the file system by default. It will only be having scheduler and maybe some APIs to create the tasks, some APIs to create the semaphores and message queues, pipes. So to summarize, it will be giving us the scheduler, the task libraries, and how the task will be communicating. That all basic libraries will be present in it. And along with it, there are some FreeRTOS plus packages that are available. So there is a basic FreeRTOS kernel which you can port to your architecture, and then you have FreeRTOS plus libraries where you can have CLI, where you can have TCP/IP stack or file system, which you can actually use, but this is not part of the FreeRTOS kernel. And FreeRTOS kernel, hence it is very small in size. So whenever you want to include some of the FreeRTOS plus package, you don't need to include all of the packages. You just need to include the package which is applicable to your product. Hence, the size is very less. So next thing is why we should use FreeRTOS. There are 3 points that are mentioned here. One, it is a trusted kernel. So what is trusted kernel? Trusted kernel means because it is very robust, it has got a very small footprint. So all the world leading companies have actually considered it as a de facto standard now. So hence it is very trusted. It has got accelerated time to market. It means that it has got very short time to market, which means because it has a lot of libraries, so the integrations and creating, compiling the product, downloading the project and going to the market makes it very easy and faster. And it has got a broad ecosystem. What does it mean? It means that as it has FreeRTOS plus packages which can cater to any kind of industry sectors, plus it has got long-term release support. So this is the reason basically it has a lot of broad ecosystem, and lot of companies and lot of organizations, lot of individuals are supporting the FreeRTOS plus packages and helping to make FreeRTOS more stable as well as more robust. Next slide, please. Now we'll be covering what makes FreeRTOS real time. So what is real time? So I think we already discussed this in detail. So real time does not mean running the things faster. Real time means running the things in deterministic manner, which means if we have scheduled a task and we want it to be executed at time t1, it should be executed at time t1 or plus or minus x time, which might be representing the jitter. So if we are saying that, so how it is basically achieved? So it is achieved by defining various tasks in the system. So first, if we are developing a real-time application, we need to divide it into various number of tasks, and then we need to divide it in various number of tasks, and then we need to prioritize those tasks. So let's take an example here. If we have 4 tasks, let us say, which are presented on the screen, task 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for example, task 1 is just delaying until time to run again. It is performing some very important function and then printing out the results. And for your system, for your real-time application, it is the most important task. Then what should you do? You should keep the priority of this task as number 1. If there is some background task, then you should make its priority as priority 4. Okay, I mean the least priority. If there is some task which is task 3 in our case, which is waiting for some message from another task, then it is processing some message and then sending the message to another task. I mean, it is dependent on some other task. It can be a medium priority task, and there is another task like task T2, which is waiting for interrupt and doing some data, and it is not very critical for you. You can define its priority as P2. So P1 is the highest priority for me, and P4 is the lowest priority as it is a background processing. So you need to first define a system where you need to divide all the work of the system into tasks and then prioritize those tasks. Now, it is the responsibility of the kernel or the scheduler to make sure that all the tasks are executed on the defined priorities, and all the tasks are run on the defined priorities, and these priorities are defined with the help of whenever we are doing the task creation. So in case of FreeRTOS, whenever we create some task, we use some API named as X task create. So we need to define the priority at the time of creation also. It is called the static priority. So at the time of task creation, even before running it, we have already assigned the priority to it. And once all the tasks are created, we just start the scheduler, and scheduler have all this data and it starts scheduling all the tasks accordingly. Next slide, please. So next we'll be covering FreeRTOS task and the scheduler configuration. Okay, so now what is a scheduler? So scheduler is basically, it is a part of the kernel, the FreeRTOS kernel, which is responsible for deciding which task should be executing at any particular event. So it is just a piece of the software which is in FreeRTOS, which decides, let's say we have 4 tasks, which task will be executed in the next cycle, that is decided by the scheduler. And what is scheduler configuration or policy? It is the algorithm used by the scheduler to decide which task to run next. So there is a clear difference between a scheduler, that is the piece of the software which is doing it, and which algorithm it is using to execute it is known as the scheduler policy or the configuration. Now if we just compare the non-real-time and the real-time systems again, the policy or the scheduling policy on the non-real-time system might be that it will be doing the fair proportion of processor time for each task in case of non-real-time, because it wants that responsiveness. But in case of embedded systems or the real-time systems, we want to execute it in timely manner, I mean deterministically. Now let's take an example of, we'll be taking a very basic example of the real-time system. Let's say we have a real-time system where we have a keypad and we have a LCD. So whenever user types onto the keypad, then a visual feedback of every key press within a reasonable period should be available. So whenever user types, it should be presented onto the LCD screen very as soon as possible. So if we just consider a product where our longest acceptable period is 100 milliseconds, then any response between 0 and 100 milliseconds would be acceptable, because human eye cannot detect it. So after 100 milliseconds, let us say human eye can detect it, but before that human eye won't be able to detect it. So it is a crucial activity, but so if we, let's say, define a task, key handler task for it in FreeRTOS, then it is defined a priority. Let's say priority, for example, we'll be defining it as a low priority, because if we have another task which is a control task, which is filtering the basic output. Now we are talking about another task in this system where there's a control function which is digitally filtering the input. Now input must be sampled, filtered after every 2 milliseconds. So we have two tasks now. So we need to intelligently decide the priority between them, because we have one control task which is about to be scheduled after 2 milliseconds, and if it is not scheduled, then we might be having a bad data. But if the key handler task is not scheduled 100 milliseconds, that is okay. So we'll be defining the first task, that is the key handler task, as a low priority and control task as a high priority. So if you see in this diagram, even if you see in this diagram, so whenever there's nothing running in the FreeRTOS, idle task is always running. You can see the green color line. It is always running whenever nothing is running. And if some user gives a key press event, which is represented in blue color, then the key handler task start running. And when the key handler task just takes some input and present it to the LCD, it just stops, and then again the idle task is running. And finally we get a timer event. So as soon as we get the timer event, because it is a high priority task, it start getting executed. And even if in between, I mean between T3 and T4, the blue color key press event comes, because it is a low priority, it won't be able to deschedule the timer event, and it will be getting completed, and then only the key press event will be handled. But this will not create any problem for the real-time system, because we already intelligently decided the priorities of these two tasks, and we knew that if there's an impact on the key press event, that is acceptable, but if there's an impact on the timer event, that is not acceptable. So in summary, we need to define a system where we need to define the exact priorities according to the behavior of the task. Next slide, please. So the next point here is that FreeRTOS provides basically various parameters which can be tuned in the scheduler. So there are various parameters in the FreeRTOS which can be tuned to achieve various scheduler configurations. So these are the parameters, like config use preemption. If we use this flag, we can basically select the preemptive RTOS scheduler or the cooperative RTOS scheduler. What is the difference between them? So preemptive RTOS scheduler means that higher priority task will be preempting the lower priority task. Cooperative means whenever one task will be completing its work, only then the other task can run. Config use time slicing. It switches between the task of equal priority on the RTOS tick interrupt, which means that if there's a high priority task, then it can preempt it. But if there are two tasks which are of equal priority, then on every RTOS tick interrupt, I mean, there'll be a time slice for that if we have the equal priority task. So config use tickless idle. Just a second. So there is another mode which is config use tickless idle. In this, we have a low power tickless mode. So if we keep its value as 1, then we'll be running in very low power because there'll be no tick scheduled in the system. But if we keep its value as 0, then the tick interrupt will be running all the time. The last one is config idle should yield. So basically, as I told you, if there's nothing running in the FreeRTOS, there's always an idle thread running in the system. If we keep its value as 0, then idle task will remain entire time. I mean, even if there is a task in the ready state, then idle task will be completing its slice. But if we make this flag as 1, then whenever there will be a ready task in the queue, idle task will be yielding the processor. So these are certain configurations in the FreeRTOS which can be basically used to create different behavior of the scheduler. And according to the real-time application, that whatever we have, we need to choose the scheduler configuration. So generally, we keep the config use preemption on. The next slide, please. So next we'll be covering the FreeRTOS stack and heap management. So basically, FreeRTOS stack and heap management means that how FreeRTOS manages the stack and the heap. So if we just look at this diagram on the left, so if we have a system RAM, so generally what happens, stack grows down and heap grows up, and there's some static area. So whatever static variables we have, it goes into static area. Whatever we malloc, it goes into heap area, and whatever local variables we define, it goes to stack. So in case of FreeRTOS, who decides where heap memory should start and where it should end? So by default, FreeRTOS heap is declared by the kernel itself at compile time. So in the linker files of the kernel, we are generally declaring or dividing the areas of the RAM so that the heap area is defined. Now, why we are actually talking about stack and heap here? So if we so the way we allocate the memory into the FreeRTOS is very, very important, because if we will be using the generic method of, let's say, libc, if we use the malloc or free APIs of the libc, then it will create problems because they are not thread safe, plus they are having a very large code. That's why FreeRTOS provides its own implementation of heap. That's why this topic is very much important. So if basically the size of the heap is defined by config total heap size, and whenever a task is created, so a task control block is associated with them, is allocated, as well as a stack is allocated with the task. So if you see in this diagram, there are two tasks created, task 1 and task 2. So TCB1 stack 1, TCB2 stack 2 are created along with. So these all area are allocated according to the heap methodology that is selected into the FreeRTOS. And there's again difference between the task stack and the global stack. So local variables created during the function calls they are created on the local stack, but whatever is created on the FreeRTOS, that is created on the global stack. Next slide, please. So as I already told you, FreeRTOS provides various heap management methods. Because glibc, if we use the glibc malloc or the free APIs, it will be a very much overhead for us. It will be taking a lot of time. It is not thread safe. So FreeRTOS defines various types of heap management services, and these services are heap 1 to heap 5. Now, what is the difference between them? Heap 1 is a very, very basic allocation technique where it only provides the malloc API. It does not provide the free API, so it does not permit us to free the allocations. Heap 2 allows us to permit the heap 2 actually permits memory to be freed. It allows us to free the memory, but does not coalesces the adjacent free blocks. So it means if there's a fragmentation happening, then it does not coalesces all those memories to remove the fragmentation. Heap 3, it simply wraps up the standard malloc and T for thread safety. So it is introducing the thread safety. So these are the various heap allocation mechanisms that are available. Heap 4, it coalesces the adjacent memory blocks and it avoids the fragmentation. Heap 5, it provides us ability to span across the non-adjacent memory areas also. It means if we have non-adjacent memory areas, then we need to choose heap 5. So according to our real-time application, we need to choose the heap memory manager, and according to how, in what context we want to allocate the memory, we might need to choose these heap area. So I think that is all from my side, and now Rajan will continue.
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh. Okay, so I think that is where we are concluding our session. So in this session, we discussed what are different types of real-time products available around you. Okay, not around you. For example, missiles is not likely to be around you, but lots of systems that we saw, like cars, anti-locking braking system, and mobile towers. So those are real-time systems around you. And there are some systems which are non-real-time, for example, desktop. So we discussed that. We discussed design of real-time system, how hardware and software together help in achieving the real-time requirements for the given product. Then we we discussed the different types of real-time operating systems available in the market around you, and there were some open source operating system, and we picked one of the popular open source RTOS, which is called FreeRTOS, and we described how FreeRTOS is designed to meet the real-time framework requirements for a real-time system. So with this, we would like to conclude our part of presentation. Rahul and Manish, I think we can open the session for queries.
Yeah, we have one query, which is, to explain tick ideal again.
Hey Manish, your voice was breaking for me.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yes.
Perfect. So there is a query related to the tick idle again. You want to explain this option?
Okay. So so generally what happens is in all the operating systems or the real-time operating systems, we have always a tick interrupt running. So on the basis of that tick interrupt, a lot of APIs like timer APIs and a lot of actions really supported in case of the operating system. But in case of power save mode, what we want generally is that we don't want to run that tick interrupt whenever system is idle. So there is a config use tickless idle option in FreeRTOS. Whenever we enable this option, so whenever system is idle, this tick interrupt is disabled and this does not come. It helps to save the power of the system basically.
Perfect. I think Aniket understood this. There is a query related to what is the real application where we can consider the commercial RTOS. Maybe you are talking about Nucleus or Wind Rivers or some other real-time operating system, right here?
Yeah, that's right. So so it depends on the requirement. Yeah, Manish, can you hear me?
Yes. You can enable your video. I think we have.
Okay. So so these real-time OS or RTOS, it is completely up to the use case requirement and depending on what one wants to achieve. For example, if a particular product has a very specific requirement which is not available in any of the commercial OS, then you have two options. Either you pay money to a provider of that commercial OS to add that particular capability, and now the timelines when the particular vendor will provide you the modified RTOS and the cost associated, that is completely in hands of that particular RTOS provider. Alternatively, one can go for open source OS like Linux or FreeRTOS, whatever is the applicable use case, and then modify that source code on its own, depending on, as Rajesh explained, depends on whether you want to publish your source code back to the community or you want to keep your source confidential. So there are several aspects based on which you can decide between commercial versus open source OS.
Okay, thank you, Rajan. There is a query, I don't know in which year Yash is. His query is related to if the first task is not yet completed within the timeline, then what will happen with the second task? Will it execute or it will delay?
Okay, Rajesh, you want to take this?
So actually, this might not be a complete question, because we might need to define the priorities, and then if they are on same priorities, if they are on different priorities, then only the scheduler can take this decision. If let's say they are on same priorities and time slicing is defined, then there'll be an equal time slice given to both of the tasks. But if the task T1 which he mentions is a high priority, then it cannot be scheduled out by a low priority task. So it depends on the priorities at which these tasks are running.
Perfect. Yeah. Yes, I think you rightly answered this. A more deep dive is required. Yes, for real-time operating system schedulers and all those things, that how interrupt and how the round robin, and there are different types of implementation there. So please deep dive into that so that you can understand that if first task is running and it is not completed, then what about the second task? Okay. There is a query from, I think, someone from the VLSI domain. He or she, Shuhas, is in SOC development. So his query is related to the performance analysis. When SOC is under development, what different types of prospects with respect to the real-time system design, and do we have any sort of tools or some simulation or emulation setups ready where we can, from the real-time system designer, we can say that whatever resources are available in the design, it is okay.
Okay. Your voice is breaking for me, but can you hear me, Manish? Probably I heard the question.
Okay. Okay, I will take this question. So
okay.
Someone from the team is basically asking this. You rightly said, yes, we have to analyze that what all resources required, at what speed we are looking for, what is the real-time system requirement, and what are the time critical tasks are there. So we have to analyze all those things, and then we can give a green signal to the architects, the SOC architects, that yes, the real-time system requirements are catered with this type of design, which includes different type of memory availability, the core execution, the clock availability, the interrupt latencies, critical parameters where a real-time system is going to be evaluated. Yes, there are certain tools available by which we can analyze this thing, but yes, as such there is no some real-time system design tool which will give you all the parameters. It basically a experienced architect or experienced real-time system guy can define all those things. Okay. Again, one more query from Suhas is, do you have any example for bring up the real-time RTOS on the emulator model?
Okay. So I think what in NXP we are doing, we generally do a lot of software development even before real silicon is available. And in that process, what we do, we bring up whatever RTOS is we are using. So FreeRTOS is not the only RTOS that NXP is using. NXP uses a few other RTOSs as well, depending on exact product requirement. So whatever is the product requirement for that particular SoC, during emulation, we do bring up of that RTOS on the actual system in the emulation. So let me add to what Manish answered for the previous question. At the system level, suppose if we are designing a 5G SoC, that means the SoC that is going to use in the 5G modem, which is executing the layer 1 stack of the 5G. Here, the requirement for this type of product is that in very short span of time, you have to do switching between transmit and receive. So in 5G, generally the systems are TDD or time duplex switching, where within one very short time frame, you have to change the direction from transmit to receive, and this duration could be as small as maybe 14 microsecond. And this is not a fixed one. Software might be asked to generate some GPIO event to drive any peripheral at 14 microsecond. Subsequently, 5G G-Node B or the BTS can tell you, okay, you have another transmit opportunity after some time, which is you can say 28 microsecond and so on. So now software is unlikely to handle all these such a very low latency activities where the requirement is to play within microseconds. So what we do, we generally have in hardware very fine-grained timers, and the software can program the sequence in the beginning that GPIO event has to be driven at t is equal to say 3 microsecond, then t is equal to 17 microsecond, t is equal to 15 microsecond, and long sequence can be programmed in the system. In the emulation or in the real system, what we do, based on software configuration, we measure the GPIO output using the scope in the real silicon or using some emulation waveforms. We verify whether the real sequence is matching with whatever software is programming. So here there are two roles. One, whether hardware is doing this switching or GPIO triggering at right time, and the other role is FreeRTOS, where FreeRTOS is supposed to program this timing sequence whenever BTS or G-Node B is asking.
One last query. Is there a guideline to decide the stack size of each task and global stack, or it is highly empirical in nature for real-time systems where not all nesting scenarios could not be visualized?
Okay. So in a real-time system, we will have to visualize all possible scenario that includes whatever is the nesting possibilities. Okay, because if there is a lot of nesting, uncontrolled nesting, each nesting of the function pushes something on the stack, and since the memories are limited in the real-time system, so we cannot allow unlimited nesting. So software design will have to take care of nesting considerations. In addition to that, regards to the text size, yes, generally a real-time system. So there are two types of system. One, which are very hard in real time, which are low end kind of thing. For example, 5G modem, okay, where layer 1 is executing. So that is a small subsystem where you don't have a DDR kind of thing, limited a few megabytes of memory is available. So that megabyte of memory has to be used for text and data. So you will have to be very wise how you want to dimension usage of that whatever memory is available between text and data. So that is a very important design consideration to understand how to partition whatever resources, including memory, between text and data.
Okay, that's all on chat box. Maybe Rahul, any hand raised?
No, Manish.
Okay, thank you, Rahul, for all your support. Thank you, Rajan and Rajesh. We don't have any other queries. Thanks a lot for all your effort. A very, nice session on the real-time systems. Our, students will go and deep dive into this one, and maybe they can, shape their career in this direction. So thanks a lot for all your effort, and we'll meet again on first Tuesday next month. Thanks a lot, all the young innovators. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.